Hey there, welcome to Old Man Runner. In today's video, I'm going to compare 3 running watches. First of all, I'm going to look at the Apple Watch Series 6 and some of its limitations. And then I'm going to look at the Coros Pace 2 and the Garmin Forerunner 55. And finally, I'm going to make some recommendations. I bought the Apple Watch first. I had a Series 4 and then I bought the Series 6. And it's a great watch, but it's a very basic running watch. I use or have been using a Stride footbod, and I wanted to pair that with a running watch, a dedicated running watch. It pairs well and it allows you to have the training plans port across easily on both Apple, Coros, and also Garmin. And strangely enough, and it wasn't my aim, but I ended up with all 3. So in today's video, we're going to look at the pros and cons of each of them and try and decide which one you should buy. Now, watches are complicated and there's so much going on in any of these watches, even though 2 of them are fairly basic. Basic in large inverted commas. But there's lots of stuff online, and I'm only really looking at these watches from the point of view of running and a particular way of running, a particular data sets I want to capture. So what I'm suggesting you do is go and look at all the other videos about these watches before you'd make a decision. DC Rainmaker makes excellent videos. Chase the Summit does some really good ones on these watches. Desfit, there's a lot of them. I'm going to have a particular bias because there's certain things I'm interested in, and I think it's a good idea for you to try and capture as much stuff as you can before making any decisions. And then, as always, pop any questions in the comments below and I'll happily test away all the obscure parts of these watches and try and come up with any answers you might need. The Apple Watch is a super watch. I mean, at its most basic, it tells you the time, but then so does your phone. I bought it for the health metrics. It has a basic ECG thing in it. It'll do, I think it's got an O2 sensor in it, various health metrics. That's why I bought it. I mean, I think that's where the Apple Watch has moved to. It's primarily in terms of health metrics. I use a couple of other surprising things on it. The best thing, and we've all been in lockdown, I guess. Apple Pay has been wonderful. It's wonderful on the phone or on the watch. It's way better and way easier on the phone. I've also used it, ironically enough, for Shazam. I'm listening on the radio in the car and then tap Shazam and find out what's playing. Very obscure use of a watch, but there you go. And I use it for Siri all the time, making these videos when I'm trying to compare imperial data to metric data. It's very handy for conversion. It's very handy for doing math. So I use it for all those kinds of things. I've used it, map my run with some speakers telling me speed up or slow down or whatever. And of recent years, I've paired it with the Stride. But it has 2 major problems for me. One is there's no dedicated button when using the Stride application to start and stop the watch. And any of you who've got to try and operate a phone in the rain like I was last night, and it just won't work because the screen is wet, the watch surface gets wet, very hard to operate. And so if you're doing a virtual marathon, which I've done a couple times, you're trying to stop the thing at the end, it's not great. I've had to kill the switch a couple of times just to try and record something or take a screen photo. Not ideal from that point of view. The other thing, one of the reasons I bought this is I don't particularly want an always on screen, but I do when I'm running. And Apple advertised that with this watch, but they don't tell you it's only on their native applications. So I think they're a bit economical with the truth. It's not an economical watch, but Apple just put the facts out there. You don't need to hide this stuff away. Having got the Apple Watch out of the way, I'm going to directly compare these 2, the Garmin Forerunner 55 and the Coros Pace 2. There's so much stuff to go into these watches, and I don't want to bore you too much. I mean, bore you a little, yeah, but not too much. So there won't be any deep diving. So I'll give you an overview as to how I use them, why I use them, and what I think they're good and bad at. And then hopefully you'll ask any questions after that. So let's get in there. The Pace 2 and the Garmin are both the same price effectively. They're $199.99 and they're both £179.99. Pace and Coros don't sell the Pace 2 directly in Ireland or in Australia, in which case I could find one at €216 as opposed to €205 for the Garmin, or $313.55 in Australian, or $329 for the Garmin. So they're about the same price. They're targeted exactly at each other. These 2 watches weigh the same. 37 grams or 1.3 ounces. Now, a lot has been made of the fact that you can get the Coros is the lightest GPS watch at 29 grams or 1.02 ounces, but that's only if you use a particular nylon strap that's available. But that strap will also fit the Garmin. So look, and anyway, it's very little difference. So we're splitting hairs here. Now the dimensions are also they're so close: 42 by 42 millimeters each one, by 11.7 deep for the Coros and 11.6 for the Garmin, and 1.65 inches by 1.65 inches by 0.46 inches. They're the same size. I mean, give or take her. So you're looking at pretty similar sized watches. Both the watches I bought were white. I like it that way because I've got the evil Apple watch in black and good watch in white. Well, it's just easier for me. But they're available in different colors in different markets. And again, the straps are interchangeable both with each other and with common straps. So you can mix and match all sorts of color combinations to suit yourselves. So the watches are the same weight and the same size and they look pretty much the same. So let's have a look at some of the differences. Big one for me is the screen size. I don't have great eyesight and the screen size, I'd have them as big as I could get. I'd have a dinner plate on my arm if I could, practically. But the Garmin is small. It's got a big bezel, but actually the screen size is only 26.3 millimeters wide, which is just over an inch. It's 208 by 208 pixels. This, on the other hand, has a 31.5 millimeter diameter screen with 1.24 inches, and it's 240 by 240 pixels. And believe me, they make a huge difference. To me, the Garmin screen is unreadable. I mean, you can just about read it, but you have to be concentrating when you're running along. No, to me, it's unusable. Now, if you're not worried about eyesight, if that's not a particular issue for you, maybe it's okay. But for me, that will be a deal breaker in terms of which of these two to choose. The screens are unusual. On the Apple Watch, it's very bright inside the house, but if I go outside, it's not as bright. When I'm indoors, the Coros, which some people say is got a great screen, and some people say it hasn't got a great screen, or in terms of brightness. I find it fantastic. Inside the house, it looks a little dim. I was a bit disappointed when I first put it on. But when I'm outside and out running, it's very bright. So I like that. And the Garmin's the same, actually. Outside, brightness is not an issue. Kind of odd. They're both dim in the house, but when you go out, for what they're supposed for, they're ideal. This isn't a deal breaker for me, but it might be for you. The Garmin is operated by 5 buttons, so you've got to learn each button and work your way around it. The Coros has 2 buttons, one of which is a scroll wheel. I find this incredibly intuitive to use. I don't usually use it on this wrist. Right, I'll swap them over. But I find it very easy to operate the scroll wheel. You can lock it. I don't like to lock it, but I guess some people must. It came by default locked. But you can scroll around and go back between the stuff. I find this very easy and very quick to learn how to use. And if you're flipping between a lot of technology, that's something that you pretty much want. I get it that if I'm operating this thing for months on end, I'm going to know all the ins and outs of it. But I shouldn't have to. A disadvantage of the scroll wheel is if you're using gloves. It's not winter at the moment, but I did put on a pair of gloves and try and operate it. And it worked okay. Not fantastic, but not a deal breaker. But I imagine if it was wet and cold and your hands are numb, then yeah, that might be a problem. The menu system on the Coros is really easy to use. I find my way around without any bother. This is a nightmare. I still can't figure out right. It took me a week to figure out how to turn off notifications. Now, I'm wearing these with an Apple Watch, and the last thing I want is the Apple Watches, the texts are going off, and then the texts are going off on this. Apart from which they look terrible on this. It just reminds me how cruddy the watch is, the screen is. I find it took me till yesterday, I've had this thing about 3 weeks, to figure out how to turn off the notifications. And there's lots of stuff buried in sub-menus. So if I want to switch this from this wrist to this wrist, it doesn't take me any length of time. I can figure it out. I was going out the other day on the train. I wanted to set a data set for, I was going up a hill. I wanted my heart rate, I wanted the elevation, and I wanted pace. It was, the job is task of seconds. It's really intuitive as opposed to the Garmin. I do get it. Yeah, you get a Garmin and your bind system and it'll be easy after a while. But at first, nah. I bought both watches without having tested them before. I'd looked at some videos, but again, as I've said, they don't always address every question you want. They can't. It's just impossible to. I wasn't aware that the screen was much smaller than this, even though I'd seen loads of pictures, and I Anyway, it escaped my mind. But I was distinctly aware of the sensors. This watch has more sensors. It has, in particular, a barometric altimeter. That means when I'm trying to measure the heights and hills, which I am interested in, it measures it from a sensor, not by reading a map, which is effectively what the Garmin does. I'm not saying it's any less accurate, in particular in a well-trafficked, well-mapped area like Dublin, but I actually prefer having an original sensor for those kinds of things. Another thing that the Coros has that I haven't used and may or may not use is it measures running power from your wrist. Now I use a Stride FootPod, which has an advantage that it has also got wind detection in the one I have. But in the running power from the wrist on the watch, the idea is that you're going to run up a hill. Most people want to run at a set pace, so they run up and they tire themselves going up the hill, and then they don't run fast enough on the downhill. The idea is that you figure out how much power you want to put out going up the hill, and so you'll go up the hill slower and put out the same power going down, you'll go faster. That's the general idea. There's much more to it than that. But that's the general idea, and the advantage of the Coros is it can measure it from your wrist. Another thing that the Coros has is it's got a built-in metronome. Now, if you've watched any of these videos recently, I'm getting more and more obsessed by stride and cadence. And the metronome is really good because it goes off, you can set it to whatever steps per minute you want. And then it'll beep, and it'll also give you a vibration. I tried it. I find it harder than I thought it would be. I think it'll take a bit of practice to get used to running to the steady metronome that's actually coming off the watch, because it's a fairly light beep and it's a fairly light vibration, and with all the other stuff going on. Anyway, I'm going to give it a go. But then I did try it briefly last night, and I'm not sure I can turn it on whilst I'm also collecting running data. So I could see myself using the metronome on this and taking all the data on this. But we'll give it a go. It's part of the fun of getting these things and just playing around. Battery life seems to obsess a lot of people in terms of these watches, but not so much for me. I mean, maybe it's because I got used to Apple Watches and iPhones that just drain out way before you thought they would. But the battery life, I mean, I charge my Apple Watch every day overnight. And these, I'm really only just checking running data. So I'm not that bothered about having to take them off and charge them. But the Coros will go about 30 hours and the Garmin will go about 20 hours on GPS. Not standby, you'll get a couple of weeks out of them, but just on GPS. Now, where that matters is if you're doing ultra running. And then also this one, the Coros, you can set it into an Ultramax mode, in which case you get 60 hours of GPS time out of it. I think it's basically doing it every half time and taking less measurements. I mean, that's basically how it saves its battery life. And that could be useful, but I suspect if you're going out running for 60 hours or 30 to 60 hours, you might be looking at something more advanced than a basic watch, but that might just be down to you. One really significant win for this watch, which I think they deserve a huge amount of credit, is Garmin's emergency detection and text message system is really good. I won't go into all the details of it, but essentially there are pre-programmed texts you can send to someone. I think kind of like there's some dude following me, or I've fallen down, or etc. And then there's also an emergency fall detector, as far as I know. It also does women's health, and that's a really good advantage. But for me, I won't be using any of those. Well, I mean, if I'm wearing it, I might. But that's one of the reasons I bought the Apple Watch for. So fall detection and all that, and health. But it is. But again, I think if I was going to be relying on a Garmin for emergency, I'd go for one of the higher end ones where you can actually see the screen in case so you'd actually know what you were texting the health center. But effectively, it's a really good, strong idea. If you like a lot of data, and I do, and you like a lot of data analytics, and I do, then there's a difficulty with the Coros in that it doesn't have a web app. So all the stuff is on your phone. It's really good. It's really good on the phone. You keep having to rotate between landscape and portrait, but most of the stuff is there, and it's also on the watch. And you can export it to Excel as a CSV file, and you can export it to Strava. So you've heard of my Strava days. Apologies, Con, I got roundly told off about how to use Strava properly and have to be more polite. So I turned over a new leaf there. The web app is really good on the Garmin. I mean, I think it's really super. It's one I use a lot in particular, and this might only be for me. I want to trim certain lengths of runs, and I do that, and then it's got a beautifully designed phone app, and that's some of the ones that I'll show the data on these runs on my gut busters in the park, and that's probably what I'm going to continue to use the Garmin for. I think Coros are developing a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, if you look in the last couple of years, that they've been introducing. I suspect a web application isn't far away, but that's not necessarily a reason to buy the watch now. But having said all that, one of the difficulties is that if you've only got a certain amount of data sensors, you're not really going to be able to get enough data to have enough useful analysis when you get to your web app. So yeah, about 50-50 on these ones in terms of a basic watch. Both of the watches take all the data that they can get and they make all sorts of stuff out of them. To me, I think they're making too much of stuff. There's all sorts of stuff about your fatigue and your training goals. Like if I look down to this, my running performance is 100%. Well, and it just says good. You think if it's 100%, it'd be better than just good. Anyway, never mind. It says I'm 47 fatigue and I'm optimized. I have a base fitness of 102 and a load impact of 107, whatever they mean. It says I've got 30% recovery and I'm ready for easy training, but 50 hours till hard training. Well, I'm going to sprinting tonight. So sorry. And then there's various other bits like your calories, your steps. It goes down. I'm 8 meters below sea level, apparently. You wonder how much stuff you can really trust. I'm not 8 meters below sea level. It's 30 degrees C. It's not. But actually on the Coros one thing that is really useful is it's got sunrise and sunset and dawn and dusk. I'd imagine it's of almost no use to anybody. For me, it's great because I like to make videos very early in the morning when no one's around, and I'm trying to figure out at what time dawn is every day. So there's lots of stuff in the watches, but I wonder, again, they've got sleep metrics, but I mean, I'm better at sleep metrics myself. Funny reason, I've got inbuilt eyelids and I've got, sensors that tell me. I mean, it's useful to a point, but I think they're taking a lot of stuff, and in my opinion, you'd be better off analyzing the data yourself. Take the raw data they've got, export it out, try and analyze it yourself. They're jumping to an awful lot of conclusions as to when you should train and when you should load, and the Garmin's telling me I should do this workout today and that, and I'm not sure they're getting enough sensors, enough information to do all that. Garmin have a well-developed app on the phone, on the web, and it all looks great. And same with Coros. It looks beautiful on the phone. I prefer the Garmin one. It's the one that I'll use for displaying data here probably in future. And then Garmin have this Connect IQ store. You can put widgets on the phone. It is the most visually illiterate, confusing, ugly, aesthetically challenged. It's awful. I mean, I criticize Apple for excessive control freakery sometimes. Like, gee, when you see when no one controls anything, it's awful. I mean, I think it's unusable. It is incoherent. It makes Finnegan's Wake look like a kid's book. I wouldn't go anywhere near it. The Coros has a very nice, simple set of things on the phone for watch face and stuff you can transfer across. It's really simple. I don't like many of the watch faces. That's not important, but they have some that I really like, but it's very easy to use and it's visually coherent and not upsetting. So at the start I asked which watch. Now the Apple Watch is great, but not for runners. For all sorts of daily activities that I need or want, it's a great watch, just not for runners. So I'm going to supplement it with a watch, one of these two. They're both entry to mid-level watches, and I'm using them for runners, and they're mainly for runners, but there's also biking and triathlons and all sorts of stuff on both of the watches, none of which I've delved into any depth. But they're not ideal daily watches. If you wanted to have just one watch, going for the Apex and Coros or a 745 or 945 Forerunner from Garmin will add an awful lot of things that you might want. This Garmin is poverty spec, the F455. I had been interested in the the 245, but it didn't have a barometer, and I thought maybe they'd bring out the 255, but I couldn't wait. As a way of collecting data, which is one of the things that I'm trying to do, it works pretty well. I can start and stop it, and I will continue to use it for that. And as an entry into what is a vast ecosystem of Garmin stuff, most of which is good. But this is the better watch. At this price point, I mean, they're both the same. This is a much better watch. It's very well judged. It has the right number of sensors. It has the right way of displaying them. It has exactly what you need in a running watch and no more. What could be sweeter than that? I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, it'd be great if you hit the like button. As always, I'll put lots of stuff in the descriptions below, and I'm happy to answer any detailed questions of any type in the comments. I'll give them a go. There'll be a blue subscribe button popping up there and some related videos there. Thanks for watching. Until next video, just keep running along.